things here. Number one, Richard, with your experience, talking about classified information on Signal, you could make the case sometimes we get together and talk about unclassified things on Signal. It's encrypted, but we would never talk about classified. We screwed up here. And is there any doubt in your mind, based on what Jeffrey Goldberg has described he saw with his eyes and actually has, but has not made public, that talking about the operational details, timing, and targets of a military attack is somehow not classified?
Not only is it classified, it's highly classified. Parts of it were probably compartmented as well. So that's not even an issue. And to deny that it was classified is preposterous. That's unsustainable. Bigger issue was, why did this take place on Signal? See, God invented something called the Situation Room. And the Situation Room is a secure facility in the basement of the White House where you have meetings. It's an old-fashioned word. And the idea is you have serious conversations around the table, because that's when you discuss big national security.
If you're talking about military attacks halfway around the world.
100%. Should you do it? How do you do it? What's the likely responses of the Houthis? What would be the response of the Iranians? Who do you have to tell in advance? How do you coordinate with the Israelis? Do you give heads ups to others and so forth? Yeah. And people like Vance, the vice president, who had doubts about the wisdom of doing it now, that's when you have that conversation. You don't do it in a group chat with emojis, for God's sakes. This is serious stuff. So the most important thing these guys could do is not just get off Signal. They could run a serious national security process where you have meetings with agendas. You think about who needs to be in. Why was the Secretary of the Treasury in the room? Yeah. Why was someone like Steve Witkoff in the room from Moscow? It's not just security questions. There's the question of, how do you run a serious policy process? From Moscow. The whole thing was wrong. Can I say one other thing? What also came through the content, the loathing of this administration for anything European. Yeah. It is a pathology. It goes way beyond anything. And it just shows that it has been the largest pool of allies and partners this country has had for 80 years to help us, not just in Europe, but around the world. And the loathing for them is quite stunning.
You know, it is really stunning, again, when you look at our military might, you look at combined with Europe, you look at our financial might. I've said it time and again, $26 trillion GDP. Europe, $26 trillion GDP. You put those two together, we completely dominate the world. And yet we're dividing for a country in Russia that has a $1.4 trillion GDP, smaller than the size of Texas. John Heilman, you have a theory on why Pete Hegseth may be more of a target than Tulsi Gabbard and Ratcliffe. Tell us about it.
Less of one.
Well, I think that you could see yesterday. There was a lot of very heated exchanges that went on in that Intel Committee hearing. But one of the things that came through was that both Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard testified after some angling around here, that they said that there was no classified intelligence material included in this Signal chat. What that leaves out is the question of whether there was classified defense material. And I think this is what Richard's talking about. This gets to the war plan thing, right? And that's sort of why I think a lot of people are looking at Hegseth, because the suggestion here is that although Waltz may have made a mistake by putting Jeff Goldberg on the group chat, again, the implication here is that the person who may have put classified material into that chat is Pete Hegseth by sharing the operational plans of the attack on the Houthis, on the Houthis in Yemen. So I think you're starting to get this picture from a lot of senior intelligence officials in the Trump administration who are all kind of quietly or not so quietly pointing in Pete Hegseth's direction. And Joe, I'll just say, there's no one I know who worried more about Pete Hegseth's lack of basic competence and qualifications for this job. If it turns out that he did, in fact, put classified material on this Signal group chat, it would be the first time that America potentially has paid a price for that lack of experience and lack of competence.
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of sloppiness there. I mean, again, there's been negotiating against ourselves with several things that he said publicly. And Miki, you'll remember time and again when we were going over Pete Hegseth and the possibility of him being there at DOD, what we repeatedly said was, it's not in our troops' best interest.
Right.
It's not in America's best interest, but also said time and again, it's not in Donald Trump's best interest. It's not in Donald Trump's best interest because he doesn't have the experience to do this. He's going to bumble around. He's going to make mistakes. This was a very vivid, this was the sort of thing that I was concerned about and a lot of people were concerned about. I mean, imagine, because you can't imagine. Imagine Bob Gates doing this.
Oh, my God.
Imagine, because you can't imagine Leon Panetta doing this. You just can't, you cannot imagine it.
Well, there's a lot of things happening here in the response, John Meacham. First of all, the muddling, the attacking, actually, the reporter himself, all these crisscrossing excuses, I think takes away from the first problem, which Richard pointed out, which was this was handled on a completely inappropriate app, let alone including the editor of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg. And I'm trying to think if there's any precedent for managing a scandal or an embarrassment or whatever you would call this, a major breach. In a way, I guess it's effective because they do this, look here, look there, and people forget what the real problem is. Is that what's happening here?
Well, you know, as I was listening to the conversation, I was thinking, okay, what clever thing can I say? This is as if Abraham Lincoln had told Matthew Brady what we were going to do at Antietam, right? Or whatever.
You know, that's what I was thinking.
Very good.
I was about to say it.
However, what this really is, and the reaction to it, and the clip you showed, is a clear case study. It's a symptom of the deeper condition, which is that basically the 49.9% of people who thought this was a good idea to do again really have enabled an organization, a culture, as Willie pointed out, that has no capacity, apparently, for shame. And if you have no capacity for shame, then you don't have any incentive to learn, to go to what Joe was saying. For them, it's a genuine autocracy. And what matters to them is that they are right and they are powerful. And I would love to think that this is somehow going to shift a dynamic. I fear it won't. And here's one further sign of what President Trump has done to the political culture. Within 60 seconds of reading Jeffrey's remarkable essay, I started thinking, this is how they're going to attack him. And I was 90% right in my head. I didn't think of the thing about somehow your number isn't your number, but I was thinking, oh, here's what they'll say. They'll say he should have identified himself immediately. And, you know, he is a globalist who was endangering national security. And it just shifted around. And what worried me about myself, since we're going to have a little therapy this morning, is instead of focusing on whether this could have cost American lives in a military operation, I was already thinking about the tactics that were going to be used to make everybody move on. And I just think this is what we've chosen to do, what a dispositive plurality of Americans chose to do. And the most important thing we can do, it seems to me, is we can choose not to. And it begins with everyone who wakes up this morning and thinks about, if you had a son or a daughter in the United States military and they were part of a projected force around the world and their safety was in question, their lives were endangered by processes that are, as Richard was saying, you can't even, to call them woefully inadequate is an insult to everything that's woefully inadequate. I would be deeply, deeply outraged. And I suspect that those folks won't particularly be. But the hope we have here is that enough of us say, it's not what we need, not what we want.
And that's